So we should be, so everyone just got the pop-up. Hopefully you clicked OK, or else it's probably going to boot you. But thank you and welcome. If you're on the phone, as always, under the meeting materials, we have copies of the presentation. So if it's simpler for you to just open those and follow along, please go ahead and do that. Welcome to everyone. You may be asking yourself, why Justin? You have a lot more hair and it's way grayer. And that is because, Justin has actually given us a very regretful path on today's CSC. He had another obligation at his new employer, which is Elevate. We were upset about losing Justin Keller at the Metropolitan Planning Council. He's a lovely human being. One of the things I knew about coming to this job was I would get to work with Justin Keller, and that ship sailed rather quickly, unfortunately. But we wish him all the best. I know in his new role, which is around water strategy at Elevate, he's really happy, and we wish him all the best. And we know he'll go on to do wonderful things there. But that is why you hear a different voice today, and why you will hear a different voice in the future. I want to acknowledge and thank Hugo Coronado, who's to the left on my screen. He's probably in a totally different place on yours, but he was super instrumental in helping set this up today, making sure that we had everything going. And he's been working on our water team and our transportation team for the last year. So I just want to give him a lot of props for what we've been able to do this year and for this meeting. For now, and if you want to get in touch about anything CSC related, I'm going to be your guy, and that is my email. It's also on the CSC website now, so if you forget it, you can always copy and paste it. Reach out to me, and if you have updates that you'd like to share, definitely already looking for one presentation next meeting, which will be on the first Friday of April, as always. And it'll be a one presentation working group meeting as we had anticipated doing this month. I apologize to working groups who may have thought, my gosh, we really wanted to work today. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough time for me to get our stuff together. I'll just be real honest about that. Losing Justin has been challenging, and we're trying to fill his ample shoes right now. But as always, that takes time, and we want to make sure we get the right fit for the role. So I'm hoping next month I will be someone with me who will be taking over CSC in the long run. But if you are interested in giving a presentation next time, please let me know. If you have a long update or just an update, I would love to hear it before we get to the end. Today, as I said, we're going to have member updates and 2 longer presentations. So really great ones. Thanks so much to folks who volunteered to do that today. We've been excited about these since last year we sort of talked about it. So excited about having both of them. We've already done our intros. It's time to do member updates. Again, I'm doing my best Justin Keller right now, but if you would like to do an update, please just type updates in the chat, and Hugo and I will monitor that and try to make sure that we're able to call on everybody who has something to update. Programs, new NOFOs coming out, things less formal, stuff you're excited about, anything is welcome. So I'm just going to go through and track that. And I see Matt first. So Matt, if you want to unmute and give your update, you can go ahead. Just make sure you introduce yourself and your organization first, just for folks who might be joining for the first time.
Sure. Thanks, Drew. Matt Moffitt with Baxter and Woodman, but update with my IFSM subcommittee chair hat on. So the Illinois Association of Stormwater Floodplain Managers Conference is coming up in 10 days, 11 days, something like that. But just anyone who's interested in anyone in the hydrologic and hydraulic modeling community, we've had a subcommittee of the Stormwater Committee over the last year where we've been reviewing all of the H&H modeling softwares that are out there. XP Swim has been the primary software utilized in this area. They've had some ownership changes over the last few years. They're now owned by Autodesk, as well as a number of other software that was XP's competitor, and Autodesk has announced that they're going to stop supporting XP Swim in the upcoming years. So we've spent about 10 months reviewing a large committee of myself and my peers have spent about 10 months reviewing these other software options and ranking them and providing some guidance for practitioners within the state for moving forward. So heads up to look for that publication probably coming out next week. And then there'll be anyone attending the IFSM conference. I'll have a session where we'll be kind of reviewing our process and our ranking.
Thanks, Matt. If folks wanted to show up to the conference, could they still register? And if so, would you be willing to put a link in the chat?
I think you can still register. I'll check,
Okay.
and if so, I'll put it. If I don't put it, then it's closed.
All right. Thanks so much. Kara, you're up.
Thanks, Drew. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all this morning. I'm Kara Riggio with OAI. Many of you know, but for those of you who don't, we facilitate a service sharing program for maintenance of green stormwater infrastructure installations. We have some capacity this year to take on some additional sites, either on the south side of Chicago or in the Calumet region. So if you have sites or have municipal partners or landowners that you know could use some support in maintaining their GSI, please reach out to me ASAP. We are in the process of putting all of our access agreements together with our municipal partners and landowner partners right now, as well as working out our professional services agreement with our partner, with our contractor. We are also going to be hosting, and Drew, I'm just going to take up the maintenance and training team update now, because we're going to be hosting a regional GSI maintenance training, which we've been doing annually now for the last 3 or 4 years, in May. And so I'll be getting the date out to everyone shortly about that. But we've also started working with our contractor, and we're going to be doing this in Riverdale this year at Peckney Park, where they have a new GSI installation, and we're going to be bringing on our ecological restoration service provider to work monthly with that maintenance team so that they start to understand all of the techniques and tools required to maintain a rain garden. And so this is the type of capacity building that we are piloting this year, but also looking to build out. And so if you have a site that, you know, something like that sounds like a good strategy for too, I would love to talk to you. And again, it's been a mild season, so we think our field crews are going to be able to get started pretty soon. So I'll drop my email in the chat, and if you want to reach out, please do. Thanks, Drew.
And no problem. Kara, Kate actually had a quick question in the chat. Can you reiterate where you're already working?
Yeah, so we're working in East Side, Pullman, Midlothian. We also work in the city of Gary, Blue Island. So sort of all over, you know, Calumet region and south side of Chicago. So as long as they fit within that geographic context, you know, we're open to discussing.
Thanks so much, Kara. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Oh, and Riverdale, obviously. And Robbins. Sorry, I'm blanking. All right, I'll stop talking now.
And I'm sure that Kara could also give you like a full list if you emailed her, so no big deal. Deb Kutska, go ahead.
Good morning, team. I'm Deb Kutska. I'm with the Cook County Department of Environment and Sustainability, and wanted to give 2 quick updates. One is that we are working on that Rain Ready project in the Calumet corridor still. We are happy that we are finally making some movement. You know, we had to do a lot of the background kind of planning to get things up and going, but we've partnered with CNT, Greenprint, and OAI is going to be joining for maintenance work, and we're starting project planning. We've been really busy working with all the communities, and when I say we, I really mean Brandon Evans from CNT has been working hard to get out there and connect with all 6 communities. So we're hoping to get some projects listed and prioritized this summer and get started as soon as we can. We are coordinating with MWRD to any other active projects that are happening, just so we can throw it all in the bucket and see what we can help fund as quickly and as smoothly as possible. So we did talk, Drew, just so you know, before Justin left, at some point we would like to present on Rain Ready. I'm just working with Greenprint CNT to see when the best time will be, which might not be until we have some projects identified, but we'll let you know.
That sounds great. And thanks for the, oh, go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought you were done.
I've got just one more project. Is everyone, I think, who is on this email should have gotten the announcement that our climate resiliency planning for communities project this is another ARPA funded project, is open. We are accepting applications through next Thursday, March 8th. So folks still have a little under a week to get back to us. And this is for communities that don't have an existing climate resiliency plan or climate action plan to create that plan. And then we will select 5 communities, not only to work with them and develop the plans themselves, but then there's going to be a pot of money to support the implementation of those plans. So we have just under $16 million for 5 communities over the next 4-ish years at this point, actually less. Oy vey, it's already 23, 3.5 years So it's going to be a lot of moving pieces. But again, we have had about 10 applicants so far. So we're glad to see there's some interest. If you know of any other municipalities in the region that don't have those resiliency plans already in existence and want to take part, please let them know. And I will share the link in the chat as well.
Thanks, Deb. And that link did go out in our update last week. So people should have it, but please do pop it in the chat. All right. So I think, Dave, you had an update as well.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm Dave Lampert. I'm a professor at Illinois Institute of Technology and Civil Engineering, and I do research and teaching them water infrastructure issues. And I try to make it to these meetings when I can, although I often have a conflict and I need to run in like 15 minutes. But I am working on a proposal right now for the National Science Foundation with a political science professor here. And the area is on strengthening American infrastructure. And there's a lot of social science component. And I just wanted to ask anybody who might be interested in providing input into our proposal. Basically, what we want to do is to do some citizen science as a way to raise awareness about water issues, and then look at implementing green infrastructure as a idea, understanding better how people think about it, if they understand that connections in the community, and then other policy options for trying to improve outcomes and to get more equitable solutions between the different sides. So if anybody's interested in that one, please, go ahead and feel free to contact me. And I'd love letters of support from people who might be willing to work with us if we did get the project funded.
Dave, I might suggest you reach out to Catherine Alias, who's going to present later from CNT, because I know she's been working on a citizen science project. So
okay,
this might be trying to match make a little bit there, but feel free to do that. However, it makes most sense for both of you.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Great. So I don't see any updates, but I'll give it, to a mental count of 3. All right, awesome. We normally would do working group updates now, so I don't have any updates on the municipal outreach and engagement working group. I know Kara already gave the training and maintenance working group update, but would love to hear if anyone had a planning and policy update or a storm store update. I don't think I see Ryan, so I can give a brief one, but I'll give anyone else a moment to chime in. Awesome. I'll just say in terms of MPC's work on Stormstar, a few weeks ago, we released a brand new website, which is a lot more user-friendly and really makes the pitch to folks. And we're really excited about some of the outreach we've been doing to developers. I know Jen and folks at TNC have been doing a really great job cultivating the supply pipeline. And so this year, we're really focused on trying to get trades actually happening. So if you know a developer in either of the watersheds that are our focus, thanks Hugo for popping that link in the chat. You can take a look at that link and let us know. You could reach out to me, you could reach out to Hugo, you could reach out to Jen, I guess, but certainly MPC is really focused on that. So let us know if you have a developer that's hoping to do some kind of alternative watershed management ordinance compliance offsite. That's what Stormstar is all about. It's a credit trading marketplace, and we'd be happy to go into that more with anyone who wants to talk offline. Awesome. So I will real quick make sure that I'm not skipping anything else in terms of these slides. Great. I think we're going to go ahead and move into our first presentation. And that is, I'd love to introduce Brian Bays of TSW Design, who looks like he has a colleague sitting with him, so I hope he'll introduce him as well. But he's going to talk about retrofitting integrated stormwater open space. And I will stop sharing and give you a moment to bring up your presentation.
Awesome, thank you. Everybody see that?
Absolutely.
All right. Perfect slide. I'm Brian Bays with TSW. I'm a principal landscape architect here. We're a firm based in Atlanta. We do planning, architecture, and landscape architecture. I went to school at Purdue, just down the road from y'all, but I've been here in Atlanta since 2005. Doing great work on parks and private development. Peyton, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Peyton Peterson. I've been with TSW for 9 years now. I'm an associate project manager.
Originally from North Carolina. I have a background in horticulture residential design from North Carolina State University and a graduate degree from University of Georgia in landscape architecture. So just really quickly, we're going to talk a little bit. This group has a lot of understanding on this. Some of this stuff we're probably going to recap and stuff, but always good to have a starting point. So benefits of green infrastructure, blue-green parks. We're going to show you some urban precedents, and then we're also going to talk about our kind of key elements and stormwater toolkit. So blue-green parks are just very important to us as landscape architects because they really pair up nicely with the work that we do. We work with land, we work with parks and open space, and they're just great opportunities to take, what has traditionally been, something that's kind of been stuck in the ground and put off in the corner and not really added much value beyond stormwater attenuation, and integrate it as part of the placemaking piece of the work. So great things about these things: they work with land to improve stormwater outcome. Ideally they reduce gray infrastructure, and they really do change the way that we approach stormwater. All the same players are still involved. We just do a little more work up front to make sure that we're, looking at this through an integrated lens. We create value, and then we can also elevate visibility of stormwater on projects through education. So, kind of starting at high level, there are a couple examples here. Left side's kind of more the traditional approach, where you take stormwater, stick in a pond, and then you might have some other open space. If you compare that to this kind of blue-green approach, which is the box on the right, basically they both use the same amount of space for parks and stormwater and provide the same amount of developable space. It's just the blue-green version is really 100% usable space, because when storm events are happening, people don't normally use parks. So it's kind of the shared use parking version of parks. Other benefits, we can capture water closer to the source where it hit the ground, and we're not piping water, great distances to dump it in a holding pond where it can infiltrate. And later on, we'll talk about different tools we have to make this work with parks and open space. From an access standpoint, spreading parks out makes it more accessible. There are other tangential benefits. People don't need to get in cars to drive to park space. They can walk a couple of minutes from their house. There are also health benefits. People walk more. Great things happen with the community when you can start looking at things in more of a distributed model. And then last, from a developer standpoint, if you look at the red boxes, everybody's got park front in the distributed model, or most people have park front in the distributed model, whereas in the traditional model, a few people get great lots and everybody else, has got a back row seat and has to, I guess, has to live with the park down the street, not on their frontage. And then zooming into the site scale. So if you look on the left side, that's a traditional kind of park model. We say 7 to 10% is going to be reserved for stormwater. Again, set off to the side. So only 90% of the park space can be developed. We look at the blue-green model, we can integrate stormwater storage and quality into parking and roads potentially, and then also passive open space with shared kind of shallow detention, and make the entire park usable open space. I'm going to talk going to talk now about some precedents. These are all, I think these are all Southeast. They are all Southeast precedents, which, you know, y'all are flatland up there. So there are some kind of differences, but I think the approach is the same. So we've got 4 projects we're going to talk about, and starting with some that are much higher level planning level looks, and then we'll finish with some that we have that are kind of under construction right now. Let Peyton talk about.
All right, great. So not sure if anybody has been to Atlanta, but recently Rodney Cook Park, which is on the west side of downtown, opened up in, I think, 2019, 2020 timeframe. We did not actually work on this park. The designer was HDR. But from a precedent study, if anybody has been to Atlanta and is familiar with Old Fourth Ward Park over by Pond City Market, which is on the east side of the city, this is the sister park to that. So this addressed all the stormwater problems that were happening in sort of an underserved community on the west side of downtown. So what you see here is sort of the watershed boundaries of the Star, which is where the park is currently located, and the dashed orange lines are the watershed boundaries. And you can see on the right side, the east side of the page here, is downtown Atlanta, and there's some huge mega buildings, structures with giant parking lots serving those buildings, and a lot of impervious area. So what was happening is you had the Georgia World Congress Center, the Georgia Dome. It's all pushing water into what was the low point of the watershed, which is where the Star is, creating all these flooding issues. At the time, there were some single-family homes in this area that were having major, they were basically in a floodplain, so they were having major flooding. So a solution to that was Rodney Cook Park. So Rodney Cook Park is 16 acres. The park was set up as both active and passive space, dealing with the stormwater from the surrounding region, as well as any future development that may occur adjacent to the park. So the pond area was sized to handle future build out development within the watershed district. And then the park, that's labeled 4, the Great Lawn. This pond can actually fluctuate and flood into the Great Lawn area and the bigger park. So what you see as the pond is much bigger from a water storage capacity standpoint. This park can fill up pretty deep. These are just some of the images of the built product. This is the pond specifically, but you can see from a user sort of day-to-day approach, it has functionality, but also aesthetic beautification. There's walking paths around the park that are used daily. Quick 10-minute walk from downtown. So it's a pretty active park. The green space, which is not shown here, is just off the page of this top left image here. And again, it's a great space for kicking a ball, throwing a football, hang out, picnic. It's also large enough and open enough that there can be events such as festivals in the park, but at the same time, it can flood with the fluctuating water levels. So it serves that sort of functional approach whenever we get those bigger storm events. And we get a lot of hurricanes here. So
yeah. I might just also add, this is one of Atlanta's signature parks. Obviously, if you look at this, they dumped a lot of money into this. I actually thought it was a good place to start because, you know, this is a pretty impressive vision, and it's even more impressive that they got it done. A lot of the stuff that we look at and a couple of the parks that we're going to look at are kind of coming from the other direction, which is how can we do more with less. So
yeah. So the next park I'm going to talk about is Glenwood Park. This is a project that TSW, our planning group, specifically worked on. It was for a private developer, Green Street Properties. It's located again here in Atlanta, Georgia. It's a mixed use development, kind of getting to that new urbanist type development, walkable, live, work, play. And you can see there's a pretty significant, it was a previously brownfield, and it's pretty dense, and creating an area that could be both open space park for the community needs, as well as handle the stormwater, is what you see in this centralized green space here. The road frontage has the mixed use, 3 or 4 stories, and then it goes sort of into single family homes as you go back into the property more. But what this park creates is the homes that are fronting the park are the highest dollar homes. They're the ones that everybody wants because it has that park frontage. So from a stormwater standpoint, and a green space standpoint, it's an asset, not just a thing an afterthought that we're having to accommodate just to get stormwater calculation. We're really creating amenity with it. And this is the park today. And you can see those homes up front of the park. Great place where kids go and play. The pond down at the bottom is a wet pond, and has a liner, so it will in perpetuity have water. But again, all the stormwater from the surrounding development is collecting here, and this green space that you see can fill up to the sidewalk levels. There's an overflow structure once it hits that, and ties into the city stormwater system.
It's probably 6 or 8 feet deep.
Yeah, it can get about 6 or 8 feet deep. Next.
Okay, so shifting to a different type of project, Capital Cascades Trail, which actually includes some park space, as well as Tallahassee, in Tallahassee, Florida. The client was Blueprint, which, you know, they're primarily focused on addressing infrastructure issues in the community. Most importantly, stormwater issues. They're an hour from the coast. They get a lot of rain. There's actually a very big elevation change from the north side of this map to the south side of this map, and you can even see on the south side, most of the south side of the city are wetlands and karst topography where water collects. So key kind of project goals for this project: heal the environment, educate the public, promote healthy communities. That's a connectivity bit. And then provide equitable access to open space. South side of town, in this case, has traditionally been underserved with park and open space, and even the first 3 segments of this greenway, they started kind of on the north side and worked their way south. So this is kind of fulfilling a promise for this project to the folks on the south side. So if you look at the corridor, one of the things that's difficult to see on this map, you know, the corridor is this kind of orange line. That's the path that we planned. There's actually a drainage channel, you know, that's going to look like this, that follows largely the route of this trail, and then it does kind of spread out into wetland areas here and eventually end up in Lake Henrietta. Along the path of the trail, we do have some kind of integrated stormwater elements, you know, in filter strips, or actually there's a little bit of storage under the path. We're using recycled glass instead of aggregate to provide some storage under the trail. And then probably most significantly is the fact that we've planned 2 new parks that are handling offsite stormwater for the project. Here's the first one, called Lake Bradford Park. It's mostly passive. You can see there's a lot of bioretention, and there's a treatment train that eventually ends up in the canal. But like I said, the most important thing is we're handling stormwater off Lake Bradford Road. We're delaying its arrival into the canal to help with flooding. We're also, you know, cleaning the water as it goes through the park, and providing a number of different kind of educational moments in the park, a turbidity a turbidity station, some education interpretive stuff up by this kind of bioretention area, and then some other kind of interactive education materials as well throughout this park. The second park is the Spring Hill Park, and we're grabbing offsite stormwater from Spring Hill Road and actually putting it into a biodetention area, and then filtering out through this kind of wet meadow system. This second park is not as integrated as the first park, but we do have some kind of education engagement just because of the lay of the land. This is a hill up here, and this is the kind of base of the hill, so we're kind of skirting it with the water treatment and making it a kind of visual aspect of it. And ultimately it ends up, the drainage way is actually just off the page to the left here, and ultimately the water ends up over there clean. The last precedent is Chasen Park in Bainbridge, Georgia, developer city of Bainbridge, and we're working with Volkert, a civil engineer based out of Mobile, Alabama, on this project. This is by far the most complicated integrated stormwater project that I have ever worked on, and it's under construction right now. It's pretty exciting. So if you guys are interested in this type of project, you'll see more about this park in the future. Very visionary park for this town. There's only about 10,000 people that live in Bainbridge, and I think ultimately, the Flint River, which was, Bainbridge was Georgia's first seaport off the Flint River, is a huge tourist destination for this town. Otherwise, traditionally, their industry has been agriculture. So they've had a major shift to tourism, and they're trying to provide places for their community, but also places for people to visit that are different and unique, and are one-upping their kind of neighbors. So here's the vision for the park. It's a highly programmed stormwater park that has many different elements. It's got a splash pad, it's got a playground, it's got a restroom, it's got an amphitheater, it's got overlooks for events like weddings. There's actually a historic park portion of this that was built 100 years ago. This is kind of their centennial expansion of the park. There actually is a pre-Civil War historic fort that's in the historic Chasen Park. It's an archaeological site that it's interpreting. And then, one of the things that we're really excited about in a park like this is the redevelopment potential. And there's actually already a building under construction right now in that adjacent parcel that's going to take advantage of the park. So here's the blue-green treatment train. We've got a lot of different things kind of happening, but in big picture, we're treating offsite stormwater that is coming down this street up here, and Donaldson Street down here. We're grabbing on-site stormwater from the parking lot, putting it into a stormwater planter, and then moving it through a series of bioswales through the site, ultimately to a bioretention area. The best shared use feature we have, the two best shared use features we have in the park are this parking lot. There's actually storage under it. I have some pictures of how that's working. And then also, this was an old road that was actually taken up, and we put permeable pavers on it. It's got a couple feet of aggregate stormwater storage under it as well. So we're handling 7,236 cubic feet of storage in this park. And cleaning it and detaining it before it goes into the Flint River, which is a huge deal for them. The last kind of piece is this kind of amphitheater zone. It's really just a grass. It's really a grass meadow, but we've got a few feet of stone under that we're using to store water as well. It doesn't have to be a sophisticated method to store water. Stone, has got about 40% efficiency. And there's also the added benefits of it creates a quick drying turf area in the amphitheater as the water recedes after a storm, and you don't end up with a place that nobody wants to hang out. And then last, we're doing a cistern, and I think a 20,000 gallon cistern on the site that we're holding on to water. We're using it for irrigation and also for gray water toilet flushing in the restroom building. So this has really got everything that every element that you'd like to see in an integrated kind of stormwater park, and the entire thing is interactive, and we're going to have all kinds of interpretive signage talking about how the park works to help clean the water before it goes in the Flint River. Here's a construction picture, an aerial view of this is a couple months old. They're a little farther along right now, but you can kind of see the Flint River and how this thing's laying in. This is actually that new project that I was talking about that's already taking advantage of the value created in this park, and we expect the same thing to happen around this, around all the sides of the park that are available. Couple construction pictures. That's the 20,000 gallon cistern. On the top as it was being installed. Just lucked out and happened to be there on that day to see that going in. The stormwater planner is actually kind of a combination bioswale and stormwater planner. It's coming down here. There's some storage here, and then this is actually an overflow that pushes into a bioswale. You can see the profile of the storage, the stormwater storage that we have under the parking lot. That's actually a couple feet of stone that's going to go under the permeable pavers. If that basin fills up, this is actually a level spreader, and it just overtops into the stormwater planner and enters the system. Anything left in there is going to percolate back down into the soil. And then I mentioned this area. The road that we took up has a very similar system to what we're using under the paving in the parking lot. Again, permeable pavers, 2 feet of storage, a stone storage under there. We're providing a significant amount of our attenuation in that area as well. That's it for the presence. I'm going to let Peyton walk you guys through kind of some of our green infrastructure tools that we use actually for planning, and then we can take any questions.
Yeah, so we've been developing over the last year now and continuing to develop what we call our stormwater toolkit. A lot of these things you guys are very familiar with, but from our client standpoint, whether it's the cities or a private developer, it really allows them to see visually what this could be from a planning standpoint. So these are just quick diagrams that we've created that we bring to initial sort of meetings when we're flushing things out programmatically to start getting the wheels turning on how can we think alternatively about stormwater and get it integrated into our project. So having the bioswales that Brian mentioned, the lawn depressions you've seen in a couple of the project precedents that we showed you today, and showing these to our clients so that they can sort of get on board. The biggest question we always get, it seems like, is what's the maintenance on these? So it was great to hear Kara speak to that earlier before we got started, but that's definitely something we battle with because the easiest maintenance solution in their mind is turf. So creating more turf lawn depressions as opposed to these rain gardens with with pollinators and whatnot. I think that's maybe hopefully a shift that's going to be happening where you just let it grow and don't mow and just let it do its thing. So one of the things we have actually tried to, in a project up in Gwinnett County, I'm getting a little off topic here, but up in Gwinnett County, we worked with them on creating a playground area. But the biggest thing was the maintenance team, getting them on board with what they can do from a daily maintenance standpoint. So what we did was we created pockets and really educated them on those pockets you don't touch. You just let it grow, let it do its thing, and it's stormwater as well. And of course, they seem to enjoy that. These are more stormwater toolkits here, where Brian showed you earlier, the sort of the permeable paver aspects in the parks that we like to do with the storage underneath. Integrating a lot of street water, stormwater bump out planters in our designs that we're trying to collect, sort of a first flush type application, get the pollutants off the roads into those bioswales, or those stormwater bump out, excuse me. And then one thing that we've been seeing recently is sort of these drainage ditch channels and making them a little bit more aesthetically pleasing by creating these littoral shelves, sloping the grades back a little bit more gentle, and then creating these different zones where different types of plants and can thrive. That's essentially, I think, concludes our presentation. Are there any questions?
Yeah, just thanks so much, Brian. And I just wanted to just call out, if anyone wants to ask questions, feel free to just unmute and ask your question. And, you know, we've got a solid 10 minutes or so to do that. So hope that you'll be able to have a good discussion.
I have a question that I just put in the chat, but I'm curious about, with the let it grow approach, how do you ensure that the site's not being taken over by invasives? Because I think we've seen some of that, and then a few years later, it's full of Phragmites and, you know, needs a lot of work to get it back to where it should be.
Yeah, I think from a more civil side, or not civil, but more of a civic side of things, municipalities, we try to limit the amount of plants that we're using. So we're not just putting in 10 different types of plants. We're really using 2 or 3 in more mass quantities, creating mass swaths of plants, which kind of goes against sort of the idea of this diversity of plantings. But from a maintenance standpoint, it's something that they can handle. They identify the 3 plants that they know should belong in that area. They let those plants do their things, and then they can identify the invasives or plants that aren't supposed to be in there a little easier.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Peyton mentioned the sister project of Rodney Cook, which is a historic Fourth Ward Park. Yeah. I'm, you know, this company, and I'm on the maintenance board for that park, and it's a real issue. I mean, that was the signature park before Rodney Cook is the signature park, and you know, it takes a lot of volunteer hours to keep up with that stuff. It really, to make it work, you really either need a city that's committed to it, which is very difficult to do in a large metropolitan area, or you need a conservancy that is willing to raise the money and put in the time and do the work that needs to be done to get out. We have a lot of great partners here in Park Pride and Trees Atlanta that we partner with, but it's an issue. And COVID, you know, impacted everything, and it was the same with the parks. And, you know, we've been trying to set that right for the past year and a half, and we've got another year to go to get those invasives out and get things back to a baseline.
You talked about the cost of maintenance. I'm just curious if there are any common ways that these installations were funded. Just thinking about the scale here, it's incredible. So are there any innovations there to share, or is it typically bonding, or are they just budgeting for this and it's sort of going along in a capital cycle?
Well, the funding at the city level is not great. And I will tell you that, you know, back to the Conservancy, we really have to pound away at them to get them out there to do this stuff. But organizations like Park Pride and Trees Atlanta do provide grants, which we apply for regularly. They have a $15,000 or $20,000 grant that we use to fund tree replacement. Sometimes if there's work that's beyond the volunteer level, we'll use it to fund some of the maintenance, but a lot of it is unfortunately grassroots. Now, there are other big parks in Atlanta that have more developed conservancies that actually have bigger operating budgets, like Piedmont Park. You know, they put on events and raise money and do that. We're not that developed, but that is the I would say Piedmont Park and Chastain Park are the two parks with the best track record of being able to do that. But their stormwater elements in those parks is elementary compared to the ones in Rodney Cook and that one. And on that subject, you know, one of the things that Peyton mentioned a little bit, one of the things that we're really focused on in our design is creating parks that are just more approachable. Like, you know, turf is a bad word, you know, a lot of times in native design, but the fact is, it's really easy to maintain. The folks maintaining these parks are not necessarily the most skilled people in the world. And, you know, I think, you know, there's a trade-off. Maybe you do get a usable space that can hold and clean stormwater, but maybe it's got to be turf or at least some type of native monoculture cover that's more easily maintained and identifiable.
I appreciate that. I actually meant just for the construction.
Oh, funding for the construction. You know, so Bainbridge is a good example. They did apply. They've applied for a couple grants. I think they got a community development grant. They had a big bond project for that. And then I think for Rodney Cook, the Trust for Public Land funded a lot of that because it's attached to the Sweetwater Creek watershed, which is an imperiled water body.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Happy to take any other questions. If you'd feel more comfortable using the hand raise function, I'm happy to call on folks, but.
Awesome.
Eliana just put a question in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, sorry. Just lost my chat there. How did you select the 2 to 3 species that made it in to the parks where you're talking about the maintenance plan sort of being reliant upon having a sort of a small number of species?
Yeah, so we typically try to look at it at different levels. So we'll have an under or a ground plane sort of level ground cover, and then an understory, and then an overstory plant, and typically what we would see in our Piedmont region for that park. And when I said 3 sort of different plants, so that's per pocket. So we would use a different 3 type of plants that are also natives for another pocket elsewhere in the park.
And one other thing on that is, you know, since we do get big rain events here, you know, there are pockets, but there are also different zones in detention areas that, you know, the bottom zone floods very frequently, but there might be an area that's 18 inches up that floods infrequently. So picking plants that can handle wet feet for 24 hours, but may be dry for 2 months can be a challenge. And we just got to go with tried and true, proven plants in those zones.
I think for the specific park that I'm thinking of, the George Pierce Park, being that it was immediately adjacent to playgrounds where kids are running wild all over the landscape, we were trying to do plants that are pretty robust that come back easily. So we had sedges, native grasses, things like that for our understories.
I think we probably have time for one more question if anyone has one.
I'll ask one more if nobody else is going to dive in. Back to maintenance. Have you guys worked on projects where there is a multi-year maintenance kind of fund built into the project budget?
I have
to get through the critical establishment period,
I
or is
have
that
with-
always an add-on afterwards?
With, so a lot of times in our baseline contract, we require our contractors to maintain parks for a year or 2 years, at least a year, sometimes 2 years after substantial completion of getting the CO. So, but with the city of Powder Springs, which is a suburb of Atlanta, they didn't have a very they didn't have a big public works team that could handle maintenance of the park that we worked on out there. So they did hire a specific maintenance crew that supplemented the they got involved during the installation of the project from when the contractor, the landscape subcontractor, was installing the planting design. They got involved in that part of the project early on, and then ultimately took it over from a maintenance aspect, and they're still doing the maintenance today. And that private maintenance group that the city hired, actually, that's the best looking park that I've seen from a maintenance standpoint of anything that I've personally worked on.
Yeah, and that funding I mentioned earlier from Park Pride and Trees Atlanta, primarily Park Pride, that you can use that to fund those. Yep, there are matching dollars required, so I want to say it's like a 50% match. So it'll get you $25,000 towards maintenance for smaller cities that just don't have that robust capability.
That's great. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, both Brian and Peyton, for your time. This is an incredible presentation. We're really grateful for it.
Thanks for
if you want to maybe pop your emails in the chat, maybe folks could reach out to you if they have other questions later on.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure we sort of segue into our next presentation. So Brian, if you can stop sharing, awesome. I will queue up Catherine Alias, who's going to talk to us about the Calumet Urban Flooding Baseline Tool, and she is from the Center for Neighborhood Technology. Take it away, Catherine.
Hello, everyone. So yes, I'm Catherine Alias, she, her pronouns, from Center for Neighborhood Technology. John Kuda will be joining me at the mid part of the presentation, so you'll hear his voice come up. We are kind of like doing a wrap up on the urban flooding baseline project, which the CSC was really instrumental in helping throughout for like the past 2 to 3 years, from like inception to like giving feedback. And so kind of want to come back to you all and share what the tool ended up looking like, and kind of why the decisions we made after hearing all the feedback. So, oh, sorry. So just as a reminder, what our project goals were, it was 1, to define the problem of urban flooding in the Calumet region, 2, to develop a mapping tool to identify high-risk flooding in the area, and then 3, to try out a community collection of visual data to improve the different indicators. And over the course of the development, what you all will see will look very different from the like trial run that we showed you all last year when we were asking for feedback. And part of the reason why we made the shift was thinking about who our audience, who our intended audience would be. And we really focused on thinking about educating community members and community leaders about the causes of urban flooding, so they can be better prepared to advocate for change in their communities, because it would be tying into some of the work that CNT will be continuing to do this year with the Civic Innovation Hub and with Rain Ready in terms of community engagement. And so I'm going to hand it off to John to do a demo of the tool.
All right, thanks, Catherine. Let me pull up the tool here. All right, looks like everyone can see, looks like I'm sharing. So this is the Urban Flooding Baseline Project. As Catherine said, it's gone through a couple iterative changes as we got to know who we were trying to, the audience we're trying to reach more. I'm going to start by, so we take a quantitative and qualitative look at urban flooding in the Calumet region of Cook County. At first we started out just with a map that you could play with. But it became clear that more of a curated, guided view of all the data, spatial data layers and data that we bring to answer questions like where it floods, why it floods, and who's the most impacted would make more sense. So we pivoted, and there's two ways to dive in. If you want the guided analysis, you can click this button, or you can just jump into a whole map. I'm going to take us through the guided analysis, which provides a comprehensive view of that. So we specifically look at different South suburban municipalities in the Calumet corridor. So they're all listed out here. You can pick any one of them. I'm going to just pick Blue Island for today. And so this is going to load up. Some of you may be familiar with story maps as a way of presenting data, just scrolling through a map, and you get some narrative context around what you're looking at. And so that's the direction we took here. So here we got the city of Blue Island in the Calumet region of Cook County, Illinois. And here we focus on maps, numbers, information that help provide a clearer picture of where, why, and who urban flooding has impacted in this community. So you can just start scrolling down. We cover just a lot of these info cards are good information for residents to have. It provides a lot of informational background. We also find it helpful to just all these, some of the concepts have tooltips just to give some greater context on the fly. But first, we're talking about where is it flooding? And we know there's quite a few things that lead to that: permeable, impermeable surfaces, depressed land areas. We look at how sewer systems are tied into that, traditional ways of mapping where flooding occurs, like FEMA maps, but also we looked at flood insurance and other ways. So next we can look at the problem areas. This is a community where we have actually collected a lot of community feedback where flooding has been identified through community meetings, and you can see that layers here on the grayish outlines. You can toggle those on and off, and then identified through municipalities. So this gives some greater context specific to community feedback and elsewhere surveys where surveys are taken. So you can see there's quite a bit. Not only in Blue Island, which is highlighted in this dark outline, but in the surrounding communities, Calumet Park over here, it looks like there's quite a bit. So this is kind of on the ground feedback, which is an interesting data layer to consider. Not every one of the communities provided this feedback, but this Blue Island happens to be one of them that has shared, has done all the surveys. Catherine will I think present on this a little bit later, but we also have a whole stormwater photo page that actually shows a whole bunch of photos taken by community members after a rain event has happened. So we have actual photographic evidence of what that looks like after a storm has occurred. So one of the ways of looking at this is just the FEMA flood zone. And that's broken down by these color codes here. In the case of Blue Island, that's mostly this yellow color, which is coded as an X, which is a low risk flood area. But this gives residents just a background information of what a FEMA flood map is, what it means to have flood insurance required. And so this is an overview on that map layer. We know that's not the end of the story here. There are some other third-party risk-based flood maps that we touch on here and link out to those for residents who are interested in that. The flood susceptibility index is one of them, and flood factor is another one. But we took kind of a deep dive into flood insurance. So we've mapped spatially where flood insurance claims are happening. And there's three ways of looking at that. The national flood insurance, which is tied to the FEMA, I believe. You see that there are no claims here. And I think that's because the FEMA, there was a low risk area. So it might be related to that. But you can see in the surrounding areas, there's quite a few of those claims. Now, if we switch over to private insurance, we'll see there are some more claims here. in Blue Island, it looks like somewhere between 10 and 50 with the color code. As you continue scrolling, we include some quick facts that put some actual numbers to the colors you're seeing spatially on the map. So in this case, the city of Blue Island had 25 total private insurance claims. Each one averaged $8,250 per claim. And then we give some comparative measures there. Just so what does that mean? By comparison, 4,455 private insurance claims have been filed throughout the Calumet region between 2007 and 11. And they average 7,622 per claim. So that gives you a little bit of context. Another flood insurance is disaster relief. So this gives you a little baseline of what the financial flood insurance claim reality is in this particular area. There's a lot more background on each one of these to help residents and community leaders understand the impact of flood insurance where it's flooding. We also have break that down into a chart so you can see not only spatially, but on what it looks like in a chart for the community you're looking at here, Blue Island, the Calumet region as a whole, and all of Cook County. And so you can see Calumet region as a whole is, is inundated by flood insurance claims. That's more than Cook County. In the case of Blue Island, it's a little bit less than Cook County there. And again, we add some quick facts, some takeaway stats that would be informative, aiming to put all this into greater context. So we summarize some of the concepts that we touched on there. And let's see. So the next question we look at is, why is it flooding? What are the different things that contribute to flooding in general, specific to Blue Island and elsewhere in the area? We know low-lying areas of depression, land use, land cover, all that kind of stuff is interrelated. So we can dive into that. The first thing we might look at is impermeable surfaces and permeable surfaces. So we have permeable surfaces, as everyone here I'm sure knows, tree cover, grass, and shrubs, bare soil, all that stuff absorbs the water. That's great. Impermeable surfaces, we map those with buildings, roads, railroads, and just other paved surfaces. Now this story map is just a scroller, but we actually, if you want to, you can zoom in if you're really curious about something and pan around and see something specific. If you want to do that kind of tinkering, the best way to do that is actually through the Explorer map, which I'll touch on quickly when I finish this scroll. But there's a little flexibility to actually zoom into something of interest. But this gives just a visual spatial distribution of where permeable is and impermeable surfaces are, and a whole lot of context around that. Now, we also provide a chart that breaks it down as total percentages. So you can tell exactly what that breakdown is. Since if you're like me, I can look at this map and I don't know what that is, just eyeballing it. So I feel like a chart like this is pretty helpful. And we also look at what that is in Blue Island and compare that elsewhere. So the Calumet region, the data layer we have for that is there's like 19% tree cover in the Calumet region. And Blue Island, it's 22%. So take that for what it's worth. Another key component of all this is looking at the land use. So we can get a clear breakdown of residential, commercial, institutional, industrial, transportation, open space, and vacant land. And this would be really helpful for planning if you're looking for maybe institutional opportunities to introduce green infrastructure solutions, other kinds of opportunities there. Looking for open space opportunities. So this layer gives you a good sense of where that might be. Of course, you can use, if you want to deep dive into it, you can look at that more in the full map and kind of look at relationships between land use, land cover, where flood claims are happening, where critical areas would be most affected to invest in some solutions. Similar to the land cover, we have the land distribution chart. I can see that it's mostly residential. And this could be helpful just to get a good sense of what's what. Okay. Now this map layer shows the topographical wetness index, which I believe is from CMAP. And this shows the depressed land and some background about what that means in general. And spatially, you can see match this up with other layers and hopefully come up with a better idea of how this would play into a different approach you would want to take to mitigate excessive rainfall and flooding. We do touch on sewer systems. It's been pretty tricky to get actual where sewer grates are exactly, but this gives an overview of how sewer systems and the network of moving water through those plays a factor in different communities. So lots of great background information. So everyone's more informed about all that. All right, and we have we wanted to take a very close and careful look at who's impacted. And it varies by community, but some of the things we wanted to touch on are the consequences and inequities of flooding and who's affected most. And so we're looking at spatially breaking it down. The residents who live in these communities, we're taking a look at race and ethnicity, those who are low-income households, linguistically isolated households, residents without health insurance, or those with disabilities. So let's take a look at the demographics, which gives us a look at all those. Here we can see there is a high percentage of people living here who are people of color. And we can also take a look at the low-income households, linguistic isolation, the population without health insurance, those with a disability, and an overall demographic index. And we dive into what each one of those, we unpack each one of those down below. So whatever you're looking at, you can get some context surrounding that. So pretty useful to have all those data layers here when you're considering all the issues together. And again, we've added some quick facts, some good takeaways wherever we can to add some more context to the story. And that's, there's also environmental sensitivities. We also took a look at air quality. And you can see here, it's not looking, this just looks like not the best air quality to me. I think there's Blue Island has 185 days with the PM 2.5 over I'm not sure how to say this, but this measure is explained further down here, but it gives you another view of environmental impacts that are challenging for this community. And a recap of who's impacted and and where do we go from there? So as Catherine mentioned, the hope is that this is a tool that residents in the community, advocates and community leaders can use to get a better sense of where it's flooding, why it's flooding, who's impacted, some good data that's contextualized, and use it to create some positive action and steps forward to help come up with some solutions that are the most impactful. Now, if you want to take it a step further, I'm just going to quickly touch on the map here. If you really want to dive in, we'll take a look at Blue Island again. So this basically gives you a huge map and all the data layers we looked at in the story map. But you can look at it just however you want. So you can open and close the layer menu and just start to play around with what it is that you want to look at. Let's see. So if we want to look at private insurance, we set this as a tilt, but you can change the tilt angle if you want with this tool. I know we're just upgrading our server GS, some stuff on our server, so we might be recaching some layers here. But all the layers that were available in the story map are available here as well. And I think there might even be a few extra layers. Let's see, the catchment areas. Is a new one. We also added flow paths where water flows. The catchments also show a network of where water is flowing from upstream to downstream. And you kind of got to play around with the map a little bit, but once you do, you can find out what combination of layers answer the questions you're most interested in learning about. But this gives just an open sandbox for people to fiddle around and explore with all the different data layers that we're able to pull into this. The methodology is right down here. If you want to dig into that and see what's behind what's making this tick. But we're hopeful that this is a powerful tool for kind of a range of audiences, but we really focused mostly on those who are a little less technical to give them a little bit better idea of what's going on and where you can take it from here. But this mapping tool is hopefully also the next step in that process for those who are a little more technically inclined. I'm going to stop sharing. Let's see, I didn't check the chat if there are any questions. Speak up if you do have a question.
There were a couple, but they've actually been resolved by other folks. But
okay,
if you want to pause for questions, let's go ahead and take some.
Yeah, I'll just pause for a moment before I turn it over to Catherine, or Catherine, do you want to do the stormwater photos first, or?
No, we can pause here. One thing I wanted to mention was sometimes the guided map analysis can be a little glitchy because John and Paul really took the map box story tool to its extreme. So like one way that might make it a little bit easier is like when you go to a community, wait for it to like fully load before scrolling down, but there still might be a couple of glitches. But thanks for folks who are, wanted to open up for folks who had questions on this part before we jumped on.
Catherine, I have a question that maybe would be best answered once you get into the photos, but it just has to do with the problem areas that are included in this map feature. And I noticed that the survey information is shown as points, as it was collected as points. And so I was just kind of curious, if you discussed any concerns with showing them as points, and who you may have consulted to kind of reach the determination that, yeah, you know, this information is important and we should share it without summarizing it in any way.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'll hold off on the stormwater photo part of it, but Kate's asking that because of the decision we made for the stormwater photos. And so for these points, it was collected during the rain ready plans. So like before around 2017 or 2018. So not entirely sure why we made that decision back then. So I don't know, John, if you might know that, or anyone else might know about why we decided to make those points. But I think part of it was it wasn't just us going out and collecting it. That was residents had given us this feedback and said, this is like where the like problems were. And so wanting to be honest with what residents were sharing with us. And I believe they knew that it was going to become a public thing. But again, I don't know all of the details there. Drew might also know.
I think it was what Catherine said, and there were also public meetings where this was done. So it wasn't like a survey or a CNT effort. It was folks in the local area saying, we want to map out and share where these things are.
Thanks for asking, Kate. There aren't other questions on this part. We'd love to go to the stormwater photos. That's okay.
Can I ask one quick question? John,
Yeah.
Is it any municipality will go through that same story map scroll, or was it just a few?
No, it's any one of the ones that we have here. So you could
Incredible.
any one of these. It's
Sure.
You're curious about Orland Park.
You're gonna have to prove it to me.
All right through. You know, a lot of the just overview information is would be the same.
Sure. Right.
So it gives the introduction of like, you know, where is it flooding? What do we know about it? All that stuff. Obviously the map data is unique to, you know, what you're looking at on the map. But also unique is any stats we can pull out to contextualize the map, the quick facts that we include. So there's dynamic information intertwined within a lot of this, a lot of the overview stuff here. So we tried to marry just a good, open overview, but bring things specific to the community you're looking at to give better context for the greater understanding. But yeah, any one of those, anything here, have a look through the story map, and same for the full map experience. You can pick anything and just it's up to you.
That's wild. Thanks a lot.
So Catherine, do you want to share your screen? Or
yeah, I can share my screen and then take it to the presentation. Okay, so to like Kate's point, we did do the photo collection piece, and so when we were initially thinking about it, we were thinking about putting those points on the map. But then in conversation with our advisory group of residents, of which Karen like participated in as well, there was a big question about privacy concerns, about like how knowing exactly where these like pictures were taken may impact the like property values or like resale values of homes. And so what we did instead was create this kind of photo gallery where one of our interns went through all of our photo records and then kind of categorized it in 3 different ways, where it's like extensive pooling over infrastructure, large puddles over infrastructure, and then few visible ponds. And folks can click on the picture, see what community it's in, the date, and how many hours after the rainstorm the picture is taken. It can also be, you can filter the photos based on the amount of rain that was reported, and that was based off of the Illinois Waters, USGS Illinois water like measurements. And then you can also do it based on whatever community. So this like filters automatically based on the like choice there. And so you can just get folks can get a sense of like, what does water look like? And what there was a question of like, are these photos impactful? And we were like lucky enough to like partner with the Open Environmental Data Project to hold a workshop and kind of learn from the different participants there, both residents, stormwater experts, and some like science tech folks, about like what would be really helpful in modeling, like engineer modeling versus like having a gallery for this. And so our purpose for this gallery is really like having residents be able to kind of share with their like communities about, this is what rainwater looks like, and when like there is a lot of pooling and how that could impact them. So that there is a visual story to be told, not just like the data points on a map. The other piece that happened was residents had, when residents went to go take pictures, they also provided some context as to like where it was happening or like why they thought it would impact folks. And we took that information and synthesized it here and pulled some quotes from a couple of surveys we had gotten filled out. And so really trying to marry in this tool both the quantitative and qualitative aspects of stormwater data. Another huge piece of the tool that like came out mostly from the advisory group members was talking about the resources for community. Well, when we first built out the tool, we knew that it was really gonna only highlight like what were the issues that were happening in the communities and not really provide any solutions. And they're like, that isn't enough. And so trying to figure out what fit within our scope. And so what we chose instead to do is provide a list of resources. So one, they really ask for homeowner guidance. And so we provide different resources from different websites from our looking that would be helpful. And if you all have any suggestions for other resources we should include, that would be great. And folks can kind of like get straight to the section based off of the contents here. And then the other section was the community advocacy piece. We really want this tool to be helpful for residents in building community and creating power, like people power, so that they can make changes within their municipalities or other governmental entities. And so really talking about like, what does it mean to develop like a community group? What are the questions you want to go through? What are some of the actions? And these actions are like partially related to some of the narrative that we brought out in the guided analysis section. We talk about like, for example, improving data collection, right? Like we only had those community identified areas for the rain ready communities, but there are a lot of communities in the Calumet area. What are some solutions? Talking about when we were talking about like the demographics, right? If the demographics of an area is like it's not a high English speaking population, making sure that there's language inclusion for public for like flooding resources. And then also just talking about who the audience might be for whatever work that they are doing and how that might relate to kind of the communications pieces that they have to do. And so this tool started off as like one idea, but like really expanded because of the feedback we got from our residents and from the CSC. And so wanted to thank you all for all the feedback that you provided. And we hope that you'll be able to share this with any groups that might be residents or like resident adjacent so that they can use the tool. Before we head off into the general, like our questions for you all, wanted to see if there were any questions about the stormwater photos or resources page. Yes. And if questions come up as we pose questions to y'all, feel free.
I'm happy to start saying something. I think that being able to scroll through, like, so I just a little bit of inside baseball, right? The last time we presented this, last time CSC presented this a year ago, it was very much like the customize your own link layer mapping tool. And now it sort of tells a story community by community, which I think is a really powerful way to do it. Because as you saw John do, it's really hard to make different layers show up against each other. And that's not because there's anything wrong with what CNT is doing. It's just that your eyeballs can't handle it. And so having the custom set of layers that go with a story that's being told is just a really cool way to do that for folks who may just stop in and say, I don't know what's going on, but there's flooding in my front yard. How do I learn more about that? And you can say, oh, you're in Blue Island, go to this place, click on Blue Island. You can learn a lot about that. So I just think that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited when people call me and say, you guys are doing something about flooding. What should how can I learn more about that? I would absolutely go to this and sort of help them scroll through that.
And wanted to share some of the questions. So thanks for sharing what you're excited about on this tool. Would also love to hear any organizations we should reach out to share this tool. So for example, we reached out to a couple of the colleges in the Calumet region to see if we can like present to some of their students or sustainability committees. Any feedback, we'd love to hear feedback, but any immediate thoughts. anything in the data that was surprising, anything that feels like it might be missing from the narrative or the advanced map tool, and reactions to the photo collection data, and this is just like intel for John as you continue to develop tools. Is like, what type of device do you see people using the tool most often, like a desktop, mobile, et cetera, as we continue to figure out how to best format things too. Also feel free to like drop things in the chat too. So thanks, Kate, for sharing that the resources page is helpful. And again, if you all have any resources that you would like for us to add, that is pretty easy to add. John, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be great to know.
Yeah, just from taking a quick look at Google Analytics, most of the time, this tool and others that CNT makes, desktop is the primary device because there's just so much going on and it's a richer experience. There's more screen real estate to do stuff with that, clicking around and looking at a map alongside other data. But I know that mobile is quite a viable way of being somewhere right on the spot. And we're talking about spatial stuff. If you happen to be somewhere and you want to get some information, that certainly is a convenient way to pull it up. All of our tools are mobile friendly, but our focus is still kind of like taking advantage of the bigger desktop screen space. But I'm always curious if people are leaning on the mobile use, and if we should, if when I'm thinking about it, I should spend more time optimizing how we present information for mobile, especially with this tool where a resident might be at a community meeting and away from a laptop, or haven't brought a laptop, or maybe you don't have a laptop, but you do have a phone. I'd want to, I'm interested in that slice of the pie, and it's hard to get that just from like Google Analytics. So as long as you guys are here, I'd be curious about your thoughts.
Jen from TNC popped a question in the chat asking, will there be opportunity or is there a way to update the photo repository in the future?
It's a good question. So what TNT is currently thinking about is what community science or like photo collection process would be most helpful. And part of that will be one, really thinking about who will be the end data user. So it wouldn't necessarily be like us updating this repository, but working like if MWD is like the best data end user, what kind of data or photos would be helpful for them, and then working with residents or like talking to residents, like who do they want the end data user to be. And so it might not be us just like going out or having them go out and take photos wherever when a storm ends. So probably not, but it may change based on what needs we hear in the coming year.
Yeah, I think we collected over 4,000 photos from residents, which is quite impressive over quite a period of time. So I think that was great. Need to expand that to get more photo data.
Trying to leave
You guys
space for
did a
folks.
really great
Go ahead,
job
Jen.
with this. So, oh, I want to say congratulations, because you guys did a really beautiful job with this project. And I think the richness of the storytelling, in addition to the data, by the way, the photos really complement the data, is just, it's super compelling. I've been spending some time with the EJ screen tool lately, and I think like to use that tool, which is still pretty high level, and then layer this one on top of it to tell a really rich and deep story about what's happening in the Calumet context, is just like really powerful. And there's a bunch of EPA, EJ grant opportunities out there for folks who may not have them on their radar. So, I think in the ways that we're talking about these communities and the problems they're having environmentally, particularly with flooding, but with the overlay of air quality, and then the workforce, which is included in the EJ screen tool. I think this can just tell a really specific story about what's happening in this region, especially as we're thinking more broadly about how to attract more resources to help mitigate these problems.
Thanks, Kara. And I'm noticing a couple of the comments in the chat also, so thank you.
Catherine, I wonder if you just want to like maybe remind people about how the photo data collection process went. I'm thinking mostly about just sort of hitting on kind of what Kate brought up in her question about the points, and just want everyone to be aware sort of about how that process evolved and who was involved in informing it.
Yeah, for sure. So what we did was we chose a couple of communities based on what MWRD was doing for their stormwater master plans. And so then we worked with recruiting residents, and then we were compensating for their time with training, and plus like how like for each deployment that they went out for. And so pretty much the logistics was we like gave them like a half of a community area to like go through, and they would literally just drive around and take pictures after the storm, and they would know to go out because I looked at we looked at the like weather channel, saw it was going to rain, then I was like, okay, give them warning that this was going to happen to see if they could go. Then would check the day of or when the storm was like close to ending, looked at the USGS like rain reports to see how much rain came in, because we found out after doing a pilot that like we need at least 0.2 inches for there to be like any kind of like standing water pools anywhere. And so then worked with SSMMA, who was a huge partner, to like go and like text the residents to go out and take photos. They would use a photo app that Paul had developed on CNT's end, where they would go around, take photos, and it would also allow for them to put in their location. So on our back end, we do know like the specific locations of where those are. And then we went ahead and analyzed that data. And so if you go onto the UFB tool in the methods section, it actually talks about the number of like storms that we end out for, which is about, I think, closer to 20 or a little bit more than that over the course of a year.
Yeah, so we developed an app specific to the needs of this project. So it's not just like take a photo and email it somewhere. We developed an app that would try to account for everything we needed to collect and make it as easy as possible for someone to get out, take a photo, submit it through the app, and that would include all the metadata that we needed to, kind of know the time, where it was, when it was, all that stuff. But we were also sensitive to not including that geographic specificity on the story map itself. There were some concerns that, we don't want those photos paired with an exact like intersection or things like that. We spent some time thinking about ways to do that, just generalizing it. I don't know if you go on Craigslist, that they have like somewhere inside this big circle is where it happened. So we're thinking about that, and then ultimately we decided we'll keep it away from outside of the map. So because there were some concerns there. So it's somewhere in this big community, and it's more about just seeing the visual. What does flooding look like at different levels, and the pooling is pretty extensive in some cases. And what I find to be interesting about it is some of them are like 24 hours after a storm has happened, and you still see a lot of standing water. And even the pooling that's not that extensive, I'd be like, oh, that's fine. My kids would love to jump in that and splash around. That's all fine and well, but from an infrastructure standpoint, that much standing water over a certain amount of time is going to, create some issues, and you're going to have to pay for the repairs there. And what did it look like, just hours after the last drop of rainwater? It was probably much more extensive of a puddle then. So there's a lot of things to think about, and this is, I think, a good first step in collecting that photographic data and within a general area, and making it available. So.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Catherine. The other thing I just want to emphasize is that as Catherine sort of intimated, there was an advisory group that was made up of a smaller group of the data collectors who the entire time were wrestling with these questions about how specific should the geography, what should it look like, what is the balance between safety and compensation in terms of data collection. So this was very much like a deliberative back and forth conversation from day one with folks on the ground who are residents. So again, thanks to CNT for this great presentation. I want to open it up for discussion that anyone else might have, asking questions, making comments. This is your time.
I'll talk again. This is great, and it's got me thinking. I mean, the CSC has evolved so much, and it's going to continue to evolve, right? You know, when this project was first scoped out within the CSC, it was like, we need to understand what the current conditions are so that we know whether or not our collective efforts are making an impact. And so, and you know, I think there are clearly like good and necessary reasons for having to measure the impact to sustain the momentum of the group, and of course all the funding that's needed to make all of this good work happen. But then, and then at the same time, it's clear that this project needed to evolve and for the better too. So I guess what the question I have, and maybe this is something for the work groups to discuss in the future, is, you know, what access to the data do we get within the collaborative to be able to maybe try to have it function as a baseline, and versus what's available on this public tool. And Catherine, I think like you clarifying the audience as, you know, community members advocating for change in their community was like important for me to hear, because then that shapes the outward function and presence of the tool. But anyway, I'm trying to connect it back to the CSC and like think about how we move forward with this as a collaborative.
Great question, Kate. I mean, do you have thoughts? I'm curious. What would be your sort of ideas?
Well, I mean, it sort of stems from, you know, like as government and in a position where having known data points is like so important for the work that we do to assess, you know, flooding problems. And I know, Catherine, we've talked about this, like the potential for CNT to be able to share out the raw data points, for example, and have sharing agreements in place. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it was always a lofty goal to have this baseline established in a way that would allow us to then say, okay, here's the current conditions, right? And now, you know, how does all of the other work that is happening to install GSI and anyway, how does that start to chip away at the problem? Again, just recognizing, I think it always was a pretty lofty goal.
Well, I'd be curious about you know, seeing any kind of trend line type of data that take a look at the baseline, you know, 5 years from now or something. What has changed in terms of you know, flood insurance claims or any other data points we can look at. Obviously, that's not part of this initial scope, but now that the baseline's established, it's a yeah.
I'll make a comment. It's in part in response to what Kate said. One thing that I remember about this project throughout its arc is that the definition of urban flooding is like kind of never resolved, right? We have the words and we've got what they mean, but at every step of the way, there was always this sort of inquiry as to, is that flooding, right? So whether it's residents talking about, is this enough to be called flooding, or it's engineers at the municipal level saying, is that flooding or is it an engineering issue, which we heard at least one presentation. It's just interesting, and I'm in no way reinterrogating that for the purpose of this project. I'm saying it because I think it's interesting to try to, if the goal is to try to line up, you know, sort of recipients of urban flooding and where the urban flooding is happening. There's the whole hydrologic, you know, analysis that it takes to do that, and then there's just the sort of, if we did it, would people feel like it is a resolution to the flooding that they experience in the way that they experience it? And for me, that was always a challenge, I'll just say. Lily, did you want to talk? Go ahead, you're unmuting.
Hi. Oh, Thank you. Thanks, Drew. Yeah, I just wanted to say I enjoyed both presentations. They're really good. They're really helpful. I've worked with Catherine before and talked with her. So I mean, I really love this tool that's out. One of the things that I thought about too that might be helpful is after like MWRD does different projects in certain areas, if we could see like a before and after in terms of saying, okay, here's how the flooding, if you can get pictures saying, okay, here's flooding was before this project was implemented, and this is afterwards for, you know, GI purposes or something like that, or after any of the, you know, different projects or whatever are installed. So that way residents can kind of see, oh, you know, this really has helped, or, you know, this has really improved flooding in that area. Is that something that you guys might think about expanding to?
Well, that kind of like was in line with what I was thinking about in Kate's question about like what the baseline is and the impact. I feel like the real way to figure that out is like expanding the scope of what like the community, like the photographing looks like, and what like infrastructure would need to be put in for like municipalities to be able to get that data from the before and the after to like see like, oh yeah, MWRD's project here made this difference, or like
Right.
whether it's like TNC funded projects have also made this difference in this area. And so really need to work with the municipalities, because right, like as nonprofits or agencies that are not within the municipality, having to like know all the different projects and like getting all those connections with the residents to be able to get that before and after information, because that's what's really going to be like, what is the direct impact in addition to, you know, like the insurance claims that like John was alluding to, but that's only like one way of seeing the flooding. And so really about what does it mean to help municipalities, and what capacity do they have to be able to do that kind of effort for each area that we're focusing on in the communities that we all are working on.
Okay. Yeah, anything that, you know, I can do to help, just let me know, reach out. Because I think that would be really, you know, a great, I mean, this tool is already awesome, but, you know, that'd be an additional, you know, advancement, you know, long term to kind of help them to see how, you know, the work that we're doing is impacting the communities, because a lot of times that's they don't get the connections.
I think part of the problem there is that it's very expensive. It's super duper expensive to do primary data collection, which is what this was, right? Like Catherine made a grid in a few communities, and we worked at trying to fund enough people reasonably to be able to get those pictures in a standardized way, right? And just like any kind of that, I mean, and it still couldn't probably be classified as a scientific study, right? Like it's not going to get in a peer-reviewed journal or something like that, and that's okay, right? That wasn't the point. But there's a huge opening there for folks with funding, like a government or a philanthropy or a partnership thereof, to be able to say, if that's necessary, either for modeling purposes or for just being able to say, like, this is what the visual difference looks like. It just requires the resourcing to be able to do that. I just want to make that little plug.
And any one of those photos that has a lot of pooling by a curb, like I'd love to see, you know, part of what the tool is designed to is to create positive action. And I'd love to see a follow-up photo where a rain garden or a swale has been installed in that exact area, and get, you know, someone go over there and get a photo after a big rainstorm and see, all right, that water level's been, you know, drastically decreased. To me, there's a before and after photo that tells a story. How to get there. You know, hopefully this tool helps communities get to that point.
To that point, John, since you sort of anonymized the locations, if we were interested in looking at project opportunities in some of these critical areas, would we just reach out to you guys to say, hey, where was this photo taken? Can we explore this more with the municipality?
Yeah. Yes, and like to Kate's point, like what are like the data sharing agreements that we put in place, like make sure that it's like, you know, safe as possible, to make sure that residents aren't getting like nicked in the process of us trying to help them.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question, but even like, is there a next step? And I forget what your other work is called, but to socialize this, I was kind of curious how you've been socializing this with different community-based organizations to get input, but then socializing it with the municipalities too, and the ability that there could be some sort of data transfer so that they're made aware and have photos, maybe probably of locations that, you know, they see as repeat problem areas and would like to do something about it.
Yeah. It's a good question. I think in terms of us sharing out the tool, it's mostly just been about the tool and not the data sharing agreement piece. So that is something that CNT can definitely think about on our back end as we're like working with like SFMA to like present at places, or like, you know, with the different colleges in the area that might also be, you know, institutional places where they could then connect us with residents. And then for Civic Innovation Hub, Rachel is actually one of our collaborators on the Civic Innovation Hub, along with Meg Catania at the Calumet Collaborative. And so thinking about like how we can talk about the tool with the residents who participate there and municipalities that participate there is an idea. Rachel, note for our next meeting. And then, so I think, but I do think that is a place that like CNT can explore a little bit more as we have time, as we're like, you know, we're winding down now, like pushing out the tool itself, about like what is the data sharing agreement terms like that we would want to make sure are part of it as we are reaching out in the communications.
Yeah, hey Catherine, I'll say hi since you dropped my name. But yeah, I saw this tool before today, and I think it'll be a really cool idea in the Civic Innovation Hub to kind of bring this tool in as a way for the residents and the municipal staff to kind of come to a shared idea of how flooding is impacting the South suburb communities. And we can kind of mix this tool with the stories that the residents have of how they are experiencing flooding, you know, in their homes and on their way to work and everything. So I think that would be like a great way to see how this tool is working with communities right away.
And then, sorry, don't want to be like monopolizing the time, but Drew, I'm just thinking like future meeting plannings and whenever we have a next meeting where the work groups are going to meet. And Tara, you already mentioned this in the chat, like how we talked about how we pair this tool with the GIBI, the Green Infrastructure Baseline, forget what the I stands for. So it seems like, I mean, it's exciting because this tool is out there now and we can continue to or restart these conversations about you know, where we go from here.
How to synthesize, yeah. Great prompt. I appreciate that as the person who's thinking about the next agenda. Well, everyone knows that I'm not a huge fan of dead air, and I'm trying my darndest to make sure that I let it hang there as long as possible so that other people can speak. But having counted to 5 in my mind twice now, I'm just going to thank Catherine and John again. I know you can see my fingers, John, off the screen, for presenting. This is incredible work. It's CSC work. You guys did this work for several years, and it's a really, really novel approach. And I think everyone's very excited about where this can go from here. So thanks. Also want to thank Matt and Peyton, who I think may have left early for probably conflicts. 2 great presentations today. I think it was a pretty great meeting. Want to open the floor for anyone who may have last minute updates that maybe they weren't able to introduce at the beginning. Otherwise, I will share my screen real quick and remind everyone that the next meeting is April 7th. From 10 to noon, as always, it'll be virtual. It'll probably be the same link as this one. But we're going to do one presentation and try to revel in the working groups a little bit. So working group folks, start thinking about how you want to do that. It'll be breakouts, just like the last time we had one. And I'll be thinking a little bit about how to re-engage this conversation about how the GIBI and the urban flooding baseline connect. For next time, not to put CNT on the spot, but would be really curious to sort of have a bit of an open dialogue about that, about where we go from here. And hearing none, I will say, I think I forgot to say this. I'm Drew Williams-Clark. I'm a senior director at MPC, and I'm overseeing all of our water work at this point. I think I took some liberties thinking that everyone knew who I was at the beginning of this presentation. My bad. So I will be serving as Justin Keller plus hair plus a lot of gray hair from here on out, and facilitating the CSC. So if you have any thoughts about future meeting agendas, if you are really excited to do a presentation, please reach out to me at your next convenience. And I look forward to seeing everyone in a month. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.